do their television shows, I mean, the last thing, they'll mention, we're coming to this city and this city and this city, but nobody promotes that the city is important. What's important is the pay-per-view and the next week's television. They just changed the nature. So it's not their number one priority, but no, they're not selling buildings out at all right now. They're in a slump as far as house shows go.
Well, I would assume from what you're saying to me that you're very enamored of Mr. McMahon. And you think his operation is a first-class operation. It's certainly done more for wrestling than anything has ever been done before. So we're just going to have to go ahead and agree to disagree, because I would say you're totally off and he's totally wrong, because at one time there were several thousand people that were employed actively in professional wrestling.
Oh, yeah. No, they've constricted the business.
1,000 today, you can't find 100 today.
Yeah, no, they've constricted the business, and it's all them. I'm not sure that it wasn't going to end up that way when somebody got national TV and stopped respecting the territorial boundaries.
Do you remember national TV back in the 50s or not?
Well, that was before my time, but I know the stories of it. When
Well, good. Was there a national TV then?
Yeah, they had the Dumont Network and everything.
There you go.
Yeah.
So Vince wasn't the first one to have national TV. The first time was the Dumont Network. Okay? So all I'm trying to say to you, and if I can get you to understand it, and maybe you won't because you don't want to, I don't know. But there was wrestling going on in 3 territories in Texas alone. There was 2 territories in Tennessee. There was 2 territories in Oklahoma. There was a couple of territories in California. All around the country, there were a lot of places where you could watch professional wrestling. In this particular territory of Georgia, there were as many as 5 towns every night in Georgia that were promoting professional wrestling. Not 5 towns a week, not 5 towns a month, not 5 towns a year, but 5 towns a night. In the Carolinas, there were 3 towns a night, sometimes more. In Florida, there were 2 to 3 towns a night. On and on and on. So there's nothing like that anymore, which translates to the fact that, number one, there aren't any wrestlers that are being able to enjoy making a living out of wrestling.
Well, not as many.
Fans are not able to go see the wrestling because it doesn't come to their towns anymore.
But they see more on television than they used to see.
No.
They see 4 hours of primetime main event caliber wrestling, and I mean...
Well, there again, your lack of what's going on. How many TVs do you think I was making right here in Georgia?
Well, you were doing the 2 hours on... Well, I mean, you were doing the local stuff in Columbus and all that, I realized. But, I mean, as far as on the national basis, you had the Saturday and then you had the Sunday show.
Okay, how many hours was that?
3 hours a week.
Okay.
But that wasn't main event caliber wrestling. That was television designed to promote the Omni and promote your road shows. This television is standalone television.
What, in your opinion, is better?
I'm not saying it's better. I'm just saying this is what it is. This is, television has become like, between the advertising and everything, it's become a tremendous revenue source for the business. I like the old business better in some ways. I like the new business better in some ways, but I can't go back to it. And I mean, this is just what the business is, and it can't go back to territories because Vince is too dominant and you can't fight him.
You're missing what I'm saying.
Okay.
You start out by saying, what do you think is good? And then you end up by saying, well, I'm not saying it's good, but this is what's happening. I'm not disagreeing with you what's happening.
Some of it's good, some of it's good, some of it's not good.
Something that's good.
Something that's good, the fact that the top guys can make incredible livings. The top guys.
Is that good?
It's good for the top guys. It's
what
good.
About the guys underneath?
Well, I mean, all the guys that if you can get a regular deal, you can make a good living. There are fewer jobs, but I think that was bound to happen anyway, though, because the whole nature of somebody was going to get national television, and the minute that they did, if they were going to be greedy and go all over, a Bob Geigel in Kansas City could not compete with somebody who had national television and was offering stars far more money. When they came into his city, he was naturally going to be the second-rate guy. And, I mean, you were in enough promotional wars that, generally speaking, in a promotional war, you might have a couple of years, but generally somebody won and somebody lost. And eventually what happened was, instead of the promotional war being in Atlanta or the promotional war being in Detroit or the promotional war being in San Francisco, the promotional war was the country. And the last 2 survivors were Vince McMahon and, Turner funding WCW, which was the last group, kept in there. And eventually they ran out of money. They lost so much money because they were run ineptly, and that's where we are now. We were in the middle of a discussion about the changes in professional wrestling. in many ways, they were not for the better, and I think the territorial system was far better, far superior for creation of new talent, which is certainly something that there's a dearth of now. But at the same time, I think that once Vince McMahon went national and was successful at it, at that point, what happened was kind of an inevitability. There might have been a second promotion that might have been able to fight him, and for a while there was. With the Crockett fought him for a couple of years, ended up going under. Then Turner fought him for a decade or 13 years, and they ended up throwing in the towel and selling to him because they lost so much money in 2000. But inevitably, that's what it was going to end up with national companies. Once one guy went national and had the network to do it and had the resources to basically buy all the top stars, and the only way to compete with top stars is top stars, I think. Ole.
Is there a question there?
Yeah, I just...
If you read the book, what did you think of it?
What I think of the book? I thought the book was very, very interesting. I disagreed with your thoughts on talent in that, one of the things that I disagreed with was when you were talking about that there are 1,000 Randy Savages out there. There are maybe not 1,000 Ric Flairs, but a lot of Ric Flairs. There are several thousand Hulk Hogans out there. And I mean, in 20 years, I've been looking for a second Hulk Hogan, and no one's truly found him unless, you've got Steve Austin, who was a huge star, but that's the last, and Rock.
Are you serious now, or are you trying to be facetious?
No, I'm being serious as far as, there really hasn't...
Nobody but Hulk Hogan can fill Hulk Hogan.
Oh, no, I didn't say that. I just said that nobody has. Hulk Hogan...
Wait a minute.
I give Hulk Hogan... I give Hulk Hogan credit because Hulk Hogan... And I mean, not as a wrestler. He's a terrible wrestler. I mean, I recognize that. But Hulk Hogan did generate income in manners that nobody, before him did. And people have been trying to replace him for years, and nobody really was able to fill his shoes until Steve Austin really came along in 1998.
Well...
So, I mean, if there were 1,000 of them...
I have to disagree about everything because there's more Hulk Hogans out there than you can possibly imagine, but nobody's looking for them.
How come nobody can find them?
Who's looking for them?
Well, I think that everyone in wrestling should be looking for them because God knows that they need to make new stars. We all know that.
I got rid of Hulk Hogan.
I know you did, which is an interesting...
If you think he was so good, I guess you must think I'm the dumbest guy in the world to get rid of him.
I didn't say that, but I did... But Hulk Hogan...
Well, somebody must think that, otherwise what would I get rid of him for?
Okay, well, why did you get rid of him? Because when you
read the book, or didn't you?
Yes, I read the book. You got rid of him because you thought that he was too big to job, and you didn't think that you could push him because he wasn't a good enough wrestler.
Well, stop and think about it just for a second now. Let me try to give you a lesson.
Okay.
You can take it or you don't take it. I don't care. When he was here, brought him in, he looked good. End of conversation. That was it. He looked good. But we were running a territory, by definition, that had towns running every week. Every week. So that means they wouldn't just see him today, tomorrow, the next day, but they'd see him every day. We were running 7 days a week. As a result, you couldn't possibly take a guy like Hulk Hogan when he first started and put him in a town week after week after week after week after week and still hope to have somebody come to the matches. It just couldn't happen. Vince McMahon right now has choice of the whole country to run. And he's only been in Georgia, I think, once this year, twice at most. What in the world would I do with those people, and what would I have done with Hulk Hogan specifically if I would have had to run every town, every week, and have Hulk Hogan in that town every week? When Hulk Hogan, I sent him up to New York because they ran towns sporadically. They would run the...
They ran the big shows monthly.
That's all.
Yeah.
So they could get by with using him once a month in this town and once a month in that town. But every week, no. And then he went to New York, or he went to Minneapolis.
He went to Vern.
Yeah, well, before that he went to Memphis or whatever, and then he went to Vern. Vern has got the same situation. He was running San Francisco, he was running Hawaii, he was running Denver, Minneapolis, St. Paul. He was running towns again once every 3 weeks, every 5 weeks, every 5 months. So he could go ahead and expose Hulk Hogan minimally so that he wouldn't just kill himself and kill a damn town in the process. And Hulk Hogan learned from who? He learned from Vern. He learned to absolutely put over his own persona, and it made it work when he finally came back to Vince McMahon. If Hogan did work when he finally came back to Vince McMahon. If Hogan knew how to do what he's doing, how come he hasn't been successful since he left either Vern or McMahon?
Oh, Hogan led WCW, and it wasn't just Hogan; it was a whole mixture of things. But WCW did some huge buy rates with Hulk Hogan, and they did, you know, that Hulk Hogan era. I mean, it was a lucrative era for the company. The company went from you know what, $25 million to $225 million in a couple of years with Hogan, and during that glory period, you know.
What year are you talking about?
97, 98 were the big years.
Oh, I don't know.
Yeah.
I can't speak to 97, 98. I wasn't anywhere around.
Yeah, 97, 98. WCW was very, very successful, and then 99, they went with the pat hand for too long, and that's what happens when you go with the pat hand for too long. I think they didn't understand Eric Bischoff, in my opinion, when he was on his roll, he didn't realize that the roll was going to end. You couldn't do the same thing week after week after week on television without changing it up and without changing the names up. And I think that's what, and then all of a sudden it was like, oh my God, I have all these stars and now they're not drawing anymore and I don't know what to do. And the whole company went into a collapse. Hogan spurred WCW, and it was not a one-man show by any means, but, he was a great pay-per-view draw. I mean, I don't know that he would still be a great pay-per-view draw, maybe on a one-shot every year or something like that.
You're telling me facts that I'm not aware of.
Okay.
When did you stop following wrestling?
I'm not even sure if your facts are correct, because I heard that he wasn't able to draw any money, but if you think it was different, then I guess maybe you have to be right. You've got a closer...
WCW had some successful years. He couldn't draw in 2000, 2001, but nobody could because they basically killed the goose by then by not changing things up. When did you basically... You
should have been a booker.
What?
You should have been a booker.
Okay, all right.
Well, yeah. I mean, you know everything about it. You should have been very successful.
Not in this era.
Well, you're the most knowledgeable person I've talked to, almost in my life. Next time Vern calls me, I'm going to tell him to go shut up. I don't want to talk to him anymore. I'm going to talk to Dave Meltzer.
All right. Now, as far as Flair, you weren't that kind to Flair in the book either.
Well, what could I be kind to him about?
Just longevity as
in the world.
What?
You think he was a great worker?
Yes, I do think he was a great worker, and I know that you don't.
Well, no, but here's the difference. How do you determine a worker?
It's a really abstract thing, but I mean...
What do you call a successful wrestler? That's the better answer. That's a better question. What do you consider a successful wrestler?
I guess someone who gets himself over to the public for years and years and years, and...
It's a really easy answer. Even you should be able to come up with it.
Okay.
Does he draw money?
Flair, when business is good, Flair...
No. Does he draw money?
Nobody consistently draws money when business is bad. When business is bad, nobody's drawing. When business is good, Diamond Dallas Page drew money when business was good. I mean, am I going to say Diamond Dallas Page was a better wrestler than anyone in the world because he drew money at one point in his career? It's when the business is hot.
In the old days, guys used to just love to go into territory that was on its ass. Why? When I came here to Georgia in 1976. The territory was on its ass. I couldn't wait to start booking. Because if it did well, there was only one person to point to if it did good. And that was me. And old-timers always liked to go to a territory, if they were worth a shit now. I'm talking about the guy in the first match, second match, third match. The guy didn't know what the heck he was talking about. I'm talking about the guys that were good. A Vern Gagne, mention somebody. A Bill Watts. They would be happy to go into a territory that was on its butt. Because that way, when the territory came up, the promoter would have to reward them because they would say you had to be directly responsible for it. So the idea, and the guys that didn't know anything were the ones that always wanted to go into a territory that was doing great. Because they didn't have the confidence in themselves to be able to make the territory work. So when you talk about the territory being down, and so that's why Hogan didn't draw at that particular time, if Hogan knew what the heck he was doing, and if he was a draw, it wouldn't have made any difference what the territory was doing. anybody can draw by your definition if the territory is doing good.
It seems that, well, that's what happened in 97 through 99, or through 98 in WCW, and from, I'd say, 98 through 2001 in WWF. It didn't matter what they did. Everybody was drawing sellouts, okay? Then those same guys today, Steve Austin, The Rock, Triple H, they don't draw that well. Are they any dumber when it comes to knowing how to work? I don't think that they're any dumber. I just think that it's the business is, they've been on top for too long. Their run was over. Ray Stevens was a great draw in San Francisco in the early 60s. When I was following, when I started watching wrestling in the early 70s, Ray Stevens was still a good draw. He was probably a much smarter worker in the early 70s, but he'd been in the territory for 10 years. I mean, so he wasn't going to be the novelty draw where he was selling out the Cow Palace each and every time, and he ended up leaving to go to Vern because, you can only be in one place for so long before people have seen your stuff. And, I think that what's successful about Ric Flair, among other things, is that he's able to, here we are, he's been on national television for over 20 years, and people still react to him and consider him an all-time great.
What does that mean?
That means that...
Aren't you the one that had a Hall of Fame that you didn't put me in because I hadn't been in a lot of territory?
I wasn't the one who didn't put you in the Hall of Fame. That was voting. Tell me what you think. I mean, as far as... you said that I didn't put you in the Hall of Fame. It's a voting process, and I only have one vote out of...
You're quoting me now.
What? Okay.
I thought you were the one that had prompted somebody to call me about inclusion into a Hall of Fame that you have.
I didn't prompt anyone to call you. Okay. I mean, Mike Mooneyham may have called you.
Maybe they're just using your name for the heck of it.
Okay. There's a Hall of Fame that is in the Wrestling Observer newsletter that we do balloting once every year, and it's been recognized in like a lot of other places. And your name has been on the ballot in the past, and you didn't get in, and you're.
Well, let me ask you this question: why do you think I was in wrestling?
Why were you in wrestling to make a living?
No.
Okay. Then why were you in wrestling?
I could make a living doing a lot of things. I wanted to make money.
Okay.
I wanted to be able to do what I did. Retire at the age of 42 or 43 and tell everybody to stick it up their butt.
Okay.
Okay? That was my purpose. I wanted to be able to make enough money to be able to retire. Not make a living. I can go do that digging ditches someplace. So, I ended up going to places to begin with, not knowing what the heck was going to happen. As you know, I started in Minneapolis. I went to Calgary for about 4 weeks, and I left there. It was nothing. I then came down to the Carolinas, and we made money there. That's the only reason I would be in this business. If you've read the book, I told Vern, if I can't make money wrestling, I'm not going to be a referee. I'm not going to be a guy hauling the ring around. I'll be out of here in a heartbeat. I'm gone. Okay, so then I was in Omaha, I was in Chicago, I was in different places wrestling, trying to find myself and trying to be able to determine where I would be able to make money. When I came to the Carolinas in '68, with less than a year in the business, we were starting to make some money. I was getting ready to leave, and the old man said, you can just stay here as long as you want. And always my answer was the same. If I make money, I stay. If I don't make money, I got to go. Well, then I came to Georgia, and it was the same thing. Now, then it depends on what people call money. But there was a time I would venture to say that I was the highest paid guy next to the world champion. Now, because I stayed in the Carolinas and I stayed in Georgia and had my little trip to Florida and spent a few months when I was starting out in Minneapolis and Canada and in Omaha, that didn't qualify for some people's definitions to be included in the Hall of Fame. But if they were trying to make money, then making money was the only objective that I had. Had I known that if I could have packed my wife and my kids into a car and moved from the Carolinas to Oregon and spent a year with Don Owens and then packed them up again, took them out of school and gone down to San Francisco for Roy Shire and then waited 4 or 5 months and packed them up again and gone up to Minneapolis for Fern Gagne and then packed them up again after 4 or 5 months and moved down to Bill Watts, you know what? My wife would have been crazy. I wouldn't have made any money, but at least I could have gotten in the Hall of Fame.
I don't know if that would have made a difference.
What do you mean?
I don't know that. Guys. I mean,
what's
a thousand
Hall of Fame other than being everywhere.
1,000 guys went from territory to territory. Very few are in the Hall of Fame. Only the top guys.
Are you missing what I'm saying?
No, I think it's not necessarily.
Territory, and they're not in it. But the point is, they weren't good enough to be in anything.
Okay,
That's why they weren't even good enough to be in one territory.
Okay, but they're not in the Hall of Fame, so I don't know what the point is. I mean, if you're trying to,
Dave.
if you're trying to say you should be in the Hall of Fame, and I think that there's an argument that you should, it's got nothing to. I don't think it's got much to do with the fact that you only worked in one territory. It just has to do with, whatever the ambiguous.
What does it have to do with?
Whatever the ambiguous standards different people have to what constitutes a Hall of Fame player. The same thing is in baseball. The same thing is in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. I don't know. It's an abstract thing, and some people.
Tell me there's some standards, but you don't know what they are.
I think there's a standard in that. Jack Briscoe's in the Hall of Fame. A Ric Flair's in the Hall of Fame. A Dick Murdoch is not in the Hall of Fame. Maybe he should be in the Hall of Fame. Johnny Weaver is not in the Hall of Fame and probably should not be in the Hall of Fame. And then you just judge.
Well, who should be in the Hall of Fame? And why should he be in it?
As far as whoever the biggest stars of the era, the biggest draws of the era, the best wrestlers of the era. The same thing. Who should be in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame? Who should be in the Baseball Hall of Fame? Who should be in the? It's all subjective. I mean, there are no. I can say okay, you held the world title for 2.5 years, therefore you're in the Hall of Fame. I mean, it probably helps if you did, but that doesn't necessarily. It's not. There's nothing. It's not like it's a lock. I mean, it's whoever. I don't know. What would you determine to be a Hall of Famer? Who would you say should be in the Hall of Fame from your era? Who would you say? Who are Hall of Famers? Who are not Hall of Famers?
Nobody.
Nobody? Okay. I
don't care about the Hall of Fame.
Then I don't know what we're having a discussion if you don't care. You're trying to say this is the reason that you're not in. It's it's not because you didn't travel. It's got nothing to do with that. I don't really know.
Am I just stupid?
What?
Do you miss everything that I'm trying to say, or
no? You're missing what I'm trying to say. I'm trying to say
you're not saying anything.
Yeah, I am actually. Yeah, I am actually. I am saying. Okay, all right. I'm
trying to say to you that the Hall of Fame is absolutely worthless. The most important thing to me was to make money.
Okay, then why did you devote a whole chapter to in your book about it if it was absolutely worthless? About the Hall of Fame.
To point out the fact.
I mean, you wrote about it in your book, and you said we didn't leave, and this is why I'm not in the Hall of Fame. I don't know that that's why you're not in. I don't know.
I wanted to be in it in the book.
What?
Did I say that I wanted to be in it in the book?
No, but you devoted a chapter in the book to it, so obviously it hit you, and it hit a nerve.
Chapter, Dave.
What?
How many pages is the chapter?
4 or 5 pages.
Oh, that's a lot, isn't it?
Well, it's in there.
Good God. Listen, it's just impossible to talk to you.
Okay.
You're like an awful lot of people that I've known in my lifetime, and I guess that must be like some people you've known.
Yeah.
I did it, and you wish you could.
Well, actually, that's not the case. I never wanted to be a wrestler. That's not much of a point anyway. I mean, the point is just you're saying that people like Flair and like Hogan and Savage, who are very, very successful in this industry, and you're saying you could find 1,000 guys. You're saying you could find 1,000.
And they're still working.
What?
That's why I'm retired and they're still working.
Well, they can't give up the ghost. It's not like they didn't make money in the business. Savage made a ton of money. Flair made a ton of money. Hogan made more money than Hogan made more money than anyone probably, except for Vince McMahon.
Have you got it yet?
What?
Specifically.
Have I got what?
Not you. I don't care about you.
Okay, you're saying that
you mentioned Flair. Has he got it yet? Has he still got money or not?
I don't know. I just know that he made money. If he spent so much, that's his lifestyle. But the bottom line is, Ric Flair's made money in this business for, 30 years, 25 years?
If you read the book, you also know that when he was going to get $750,000 because he was a world champion, I told the people at the doggone TBS, the suits down there, I said, if I would have known you'd be so damn stupid, I would have made myself champion.
Okay, but the thing is in that period in the 90s when you're talking about that, there was a standard. Unfortunately, the wrestling salaries, like all sports salaries, escalated. And there's the reason they escalated in wrestling because of competition. And
no, they didn't escalate because of competition.
Yeah, they did.
Were you in the business, or are you just talking about it like you think you know something?
Well, I know something about that. I know enough to know that.
I was there.
Okay, I know. Okay, you were there, and I also know. I also know that if you were to say to Ric Flair, Ric Flair, we'll keep you and you're going to make $100,000 a year, he was going to go to work for Vince McMahon. That's what it took to keep the guys. And I mean, that's just what competition did to the business. It made to keep, if TBS wanted to keep its wrestlers, if Bill Watts wanted to keep his wrestlers, if anyone wanted to keep their wrestlers, they had to pay something at least close to what Vince McMahon was paying, or the guys, all your stars are going to go to Vince McMahon. And once all your stars leave, you're in trouble. I mean, that's what.
Know enough to know enough.
I don't know enough to know enough. That's what killed.
Couldn't take all the people, no matter what you do.
Yeah, but he could certainly.
He's limited as to how many people he can take.
That's right, but he could certainly take.
Are you interviewing me or are you interviewing yourself?
Okay, but he could certainly take Ric Flair and Sting. If those guys.
Let him have Sting. Let him have them both.
Okay, but with all of your, if everyone sees a one-way ticket where all the stars get to a certain point and then they go to another promotion, the promotion that loses the stars, the people are going to lose their faith in the promotion.
Who was Flair before he became an Anderson?
That's the point. He's had 25 years since.
Wait a minute. Who was Flair before he became one of the Andersons?
Well, he was Ric Flair working for Vern Gagne, and then he came to the Carolinas. He did very well, and then after the Carolinas, he became a world champion. And
David?
I don't know what I'm talking about. I know that Ric Flair's been a big star for 25 years.
I know it, but I said, who was he before? He started out as
what? He was Ric Flair. He started out working for Vern Gagne in 1972. What? Or do you mean what do you mean by that?
Your fans, if you've got any fans, tell them to read my book if they're inclined, and if you think it's worth it, then fine. But since you don't think it's worth much, then they probably.
I didn't say it wasn't worth much. I said it's an interesting perspective, but I was just.
Hey, you're the expert.
I'm just asking you. I'm just pointing out. You said that they were so stupid to pay Ric Flair that money, but if they didn't, he was going to leave. And
who cares?
Who cares?
Who cares?
It's going to. If you lose all your stars, you're not going to have a company.
Wait a minute. You just got through telling me that you thought that Ray Stevens was great, but eventually he had to go.
That's true. But once you had national competition, the game changed. The game changed completely. Any final comments? Because we've got about 2 minutes to go in the show.
Yeah, like my book or don't like my book, probably a good idea for some of your people to read it. Maybe somebody will get something out of it.
Oh, I think everyone will get something out of it.
You didn't.
Yeah, I got your perspective on things.
No, you didn't. It's Dave Meltzer on Dave Meltzer.
Okay, all right.
You're almost as bad as me, except I was worth something.
Oh, okay, all right.
Come on.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Well, Ric Flair is wonderful.
I didn't say that, but Ric Flair...
56, and Hulk Hogan can't draw a dime, and Ric Flair can't either, but they're still working. That's good.
Yeah, but they had tremendous careers.
Yes, sure they did. Of course.
Okay.
Of course.
And Randy Savage had a tremendous career.
The world champion.
What? Randy Savage had a tremendous career, too.
Oh, yeah. He's wonderful.
Well, I'm just making a point. You
aren't making a point.
I don't begrudge that a lot of people were able to earn a lot of money in wrestling. I mean, there are times I wish that wrestling hadn't changed, but it did. But that doesn't mean that the guys who were the top stars of today are not super talented performers at what they do.
Is it possible for you not to be speaking for just a second?
Go ahead.
Your opinion is different than what you put across as fact. When you say that Randy, whatever the heck you think he is, that's your opinion.
I know I'm saying he was successful. I didn't even say he was a great worker, although at times he was.
I don't care about a great worker.
Okay.
Tex McKenzie wasn't a great worker either.
Okay, true. He definitely wasn't. Okay.
All right. Dusty Rhodes wasn't a great worker, but we drew money with him.
That's right. And Hulk Hogan wasn't a great worker, and Vince McMahon drew money with him.
The match that you see Ric Flair have today is the one that you saw him have 10 years ago, which is the match you'll have him see tomorrow.
Yeah?
He's got one match, and that's it.
But
that's why, in my opinion, there's an awful lot to be desired. If he's still able to go out there and wrestle and draw money, then fine. That's all that counts. Being a good worker, that's your...
Okay. We are gone.